Hello, welcome, and thanks for listening to Crimes of the Basque Lands. Quick content warning, this podcast details crimes and descriptions of violence that may be disturbing or triggering. It may not be suitable for all listeners. We'll do our best to warn listeners about what to expect before each episode and to include them in our show notes. So enjoy the show.
Watch your back, and a trench is gonna get you. Watch your back, and a trench is gonna get you. Watch your back, there's a trench is gonna get you. Watch your back, it's coming from the utility. Gotta wash those red hands. It's the crimes of the Basque Lands. It's the crimes of the Basque Lands.
Hi, Douglas.
Hi, Julie. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Thanks.
Welcome to Crimes of the Basque Lands.
That's us. We have guests today.
Yes, very exciting. Very exciting. Should we introduce our guests?
Yes, it's Iñigo.
Hey, hi. Thank you for having me.
And Ramón.
Hey guys, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Hey. And today you're drinking
A Chacoli. Yeah. Atzalde, yes.
which we've had before. It's from Guetaria.
Yeah.
And
it's quite tasty and very refreshing.
It is.
Perfect for spring.
Yeah, and our friend Ramón was telling us it's probably next to the rocks, right?
Yeah, we are thinking now that it's Guetaria, Guetaria is tucked against a rock mountainside.
Rocky coast.
Yeah, you have to go through some small tunnels on the way there. So that's probably what it is.
Makes sense. Very, very atmospheric. I like the description.
Well, this is Crimes of the Basque Lands, so we talk about any crimes, any and all crimes that are either in the Basque Country or
related to Basque Country in any way whatsoever.
Yes, any tenuous link.
Very tenuous.
Yeah, it could be a Basque person living elsewhere that committed a crime or was the victim of a crime or anything.
We're learning about crimes and the Basque Country.
Yeah.
Our story today is, the title is Montejurra, which you guys will probably have seen in the title. It's the name of a little mountain.
Okay.
And I actually thought you might know it because it's 3 kilometers from Estella in
Estella
Navarre,
in Navarre.
which is where your husband is from, right?
Well,
His
he's not
family.
from there, but yes, he has family from... oh my God, am I going to try to remember
Around
the name of the
there.
town?
Around there.
On the spot, can't remember the name.
It's all good. It's all good.
But they have a lot of connections to Estella because my husband did live there. This time, Douglas is going to tell me the story.
It is. It's me.
I'm super excited. And Ramón and Iñigo are going to tell me a story.
Indeed. And you guys may be asking yourselves, why guests now, right? And I think, why not?
Why not?
We're always, I think we're trying to understand a bit more about the Basque Country and how things happen here.
As we are not actually from here.
Exactly. We've been here from some time, but these guys have been here for longer.
For their lives.
Indeed.
Their whole lives.
And I think that kind of context is going to work well in this story because it's very political.
Okay.
Lots of names, so ask if you're not following.
I will.
You're
I'll
there.
probably have a lot of questions.
You're there for the listeners. Yeah.
Okay.
So, the Carlists is one of the big themes of today's story.
Mm-hmm.
Carlismo, Carlistas, Carlists, and we may ask ourselves who these guys are, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to just... Well, let me put a bit more context. So the Carlists, that's important for our story. And why did I say Montejurra? Montejurra is this mountain just south of Estella. And it's a place where every year the Carlists gather to remember their dead people in war. So Carlist is a political party. We'll get into it when we'll look a little bit more specifically about who they are now in a little bit. But so they're a group, a party. They're still a political party today. And the Carlist Wars began in the 1830s, so it's quite a long time ago, a long party. And they go up this mountain, and it's a very conservative group, so it's very religious. They're very Christian in general. We're going to see there's complications to the story. It's not so simple. And they go up this mountain and they kind of have a mass to remember the dead that fought for the values that they believe in.
The fallen soldiers.
Exactly. And the story we're going to be thinking about happened in 1976, right in the middle of transition between... so transition, as we call here, is the situation between the death of Franco and becoming a democracy in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's right in the middle, and I think it's a great occasion for us to kind of think about the context and what was happening around that.
Yeah, for sure.
So the first Carlist War was 1833 to 1840. Second Carlist War, 1846 to 49. Then third Carlist War, 1872. It doesn't say a finishing date. I'm not sure if it was very long.
76, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe. Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Well done. Well
4 years
done.
already.
Well, these are the three the wars that are known as Carlist Wars. And I just wanted to highlight a bit of the context of who these people are. Why Carlists, right?
Not to our extent, but
No.
End of 18th century, Spain is in turmoil. Finances have gone poorly wrong, and there are uprisings in the streets against the ministers of the king. At the time, the country was an absolute monarchy, but a lot of the king at the time delegated a lot of the power in his ministers, which were in very poor regard by the populace in general. Then, in the context of all this, with the American colonies already starting to shaking up and coming to life and thinking of independence, in comes Napoleon and his armies invading Spain and setting one of Napoleon's brothers, I believe it was, as the king. Jose I would have been, Jose the First.
Right.
Then, Napoleon loses that war. The first major land defeat, I believe, happens in Spain, in fact, in Bailén. Then in comes the son of last king, which, if I remember correctly, is Carlos the Fourth.
Okay, yes.
Then his son Fernando the Seventh, Fernando VII, would roll in and would need to... So before that, a constitution had been passed on liberal political thinking grounds, with the key element of it being the modern idea of the constitution, where the nation of Spain is declared as such and made the subject of sovereignty for the country, instead of just the previously existing monarchy, which was absolute by divine right, and the people had nothing to say about it. So Fernando VII, when he comes back into the country, he's faced with the decision of what model of the country does he want to go with, and he opts for absolute monarchy.
Okay.
At one point, I believe he was deposed and then came back. 10 years after his return, which were absolute hardline absolute monarchy, then Fernando VII dies in 1833, I believe it was, after the 10 years of absolute monarchy, which became known as the Década Ominosa, if I recall correctly.
What does that mean?
The ominous...
An absolutist decade.
Like something really grim and,
Okay.
Never heard that one. That's
Dark
interesting.
Yes, the dark ages.
Can you say it again? What was that?
La Década Ominosa.
Of course it was...
The ominous decade.
Of course,
Ominous.
Of course, it was a decade that was dark from the perspective of the liberals, not from the perspective of the absolutists. Yes.
Of course, yes. The people that were oppressed
Exactly.
called it the ominous.
The 1% were happy.
So then, after Fernando VII dies, there is two competing claims for the throne, which are his daughter, which would be Isabel I.
Isabel the First or Elizabeth?
Isabel the Second, of course. Yes. Isabel the Second. Sorry about that. And a competing claim from the dead king's brother, Carlos Maria Isidro.
Right. In the meantime, it is also important to say that the late king Ferdinand VII, or Fernando VII, had passed a pragmatic sanction, kind of a royal decree, saying that woman could inherit the throne of Spain.
My understanding of it is that Spanish royal law, if there's such a thing, accepts queens as rulers. But not the tradition of the family of Bourbon.
Exactly.
Right,
The French,
So
Bourbon.
from their origins in France, they had inherited Salic law, which states that no female
Exactly.
can be
which is
ruling
more
queen.
So the pragmatic sanction coming from Ferdinand VII, what it had done is it had abolished the Salic law.
Yeah.
And then that was the origin
essentially
of them.
makes it so Spanish tradition has preference over family tradition in that sense.
Okay.
And therefore, the tradition, the monarchical tradition of Spain, where women could be queens and rule, as opposed to the tradition of the family itself, which didn't accept females or women as rulers, as queens.
Right.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be eligible. So whichever of the two sides of you take of this ruling,
argument,
whether you accept it or reject it, determines which one is, in your eyes, the rightful heir.
exactly, and the Carlists chose Carlos.
Hence the name.
Hence the name, and they just stuck with that name because whoever descended from Carlos is who they want, even though they're fighting,
for
50
Javier
years
and
later.
for Sixto and for many kings, the names of which were never Carlos, right? That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Some Carlos are not.
Some Carlos. Carlos Hugo,
Yeah.
Exactly.
of which we will be talking about later.
That's the thing. The Carlistas would speak of their aspirant kings, with the full designation or the full name, like Carlos VII, Charles VII.
Yes, they count.
As they saw them as rightful kings, therefore you address them as such. And all have fashioned this, the way of calling themselves.
That's part of it, and that's, of course, one of the reasons behind the eruption of the first Carlist War, and then, of course, the Carlist War that came after it. But also, apart this dynastical problem, there was a huge array of ideological differences between the people defending the right of Isabel and people defending Carlos.
Yes.
One being the conception of the monarchy that each band will defend.
Exactly.
The Carlists will be defenders of the Ancien Régime, a conception of the absolute monarchy more in line with what things have. Yes,
right?
yes, divine right, and a strong sense of the importance of political Catholicism. Even though, of course, the liberals, namely those that defended Isabel II, were also Catholic. But because it was the 19th century anyway.
Yeah.
I think that what is important for our listener to keep in mind is that Carlismo was just one example, an illustration of a further movement that happened in the whole of Europe of the Ancien Regime resisting to die.
Yeah, the counter-revolution.
Yes.
Resisting the death of the monarchy.
The death of the absolute monarchy, the death of the type of social system that had for many centuries existed in Europe prior to the French Revolution and to the revolution that came after it.
Right, okay.
And it is important to say that, and I think this has already been mentioned, that during the Civil War, the Carlists fight in the end on Franco's side.
Right, they did.
And they win.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they also
And
they
then
So
didn't
the
win.
Carlistas were like
And then they
pro-Franco.
Yeah.
Pro...
Conservatism.
Yeah.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
Really, I think one of... clearly it's not one of them only, but
And then who would be the left? Who would
liberals,
be
the people who at that point were fighting for
Did they have a
republicanism.
Liberals,
the
communists, socialists, anarchists, you name it, you have it. Also, Basque nationalists.
And they refer to themselves as the Republic.
Well,
because it was a republic.
there was a republic where those
you would say
parties
so.
existed.
It's
So the Republican side of the Civil War was very plural and very fraction. So was the national, the so-called national side.
Yeah.
I mean, proof to that is that one of the first things that Franco did was to impose on the Carlists a unification with the Phalangists.
Wait.
La Falange.
La Falange
Oh.
was a
What's that in
fascist
English?
Phalanx.
phalanx.
Phalanx, really?
Yeah, like the Greek military formation.
And
they all
how
go
would you
with the-
define them?
So they were, in a way, sort of much like the Nazi Party in Germany, a nationalist, socialist, in sense, party, meaning focusing a lot more than in socialism itself in a centralized, self-autonomous, country-enclosed economy. Eventually what happens is that Franco, once the war is over, and the time comes for when everybody comes to you looking for their piece of the pie, Franco kind of, in a way, betrays the Carlistas
And the Falangistas.
both by rolling them into a single party,
And
where they could bicker and fight each other.
nor the Carlists, neither the Falangists were very happy about this.
No,
No.
it was only Franco's win, essentially.
That's part of this impression of...
There's a frustration within the Carlist party, and I think this is going to be important for our story.
Right.
Okay.
So we saw how the Carlism formed in the 19th century.
And then how it progressed throughout the years.
How they evolved.
They constantly fighting for, the fueros, local rights for this king. And
then what their position was within the Franco dictatorship.
finally, they win with Franco in 1937, and then they're brought into the government, and then we're gonna continue soon.
Okay, so
Little
what a
break.
great historical background. Should we take a
Appreciate
break?
We are taking a break.
Okay, let's do it.
And we're back.
Yes.
So we were talking a little bit about the Carlists being brought into the Francoist government after they won the Civil War in 1937. And they were actually included in the government, right? They were actually joined with the Phalangists. We mentioned that as well. They were considered part of the Francoist regime.
Okay.
And so they had, coming up to our story, they had this commemoration every year where they would commemorate the dead in those 3 wars, perhaps 4, we were saying.
Including the Civil War, yeah.
If you
Exactly.
if you
If they
consider
were-
to be
yeah.
one of them,
The Carlists themselves, we were saying.
No, but certainly the
We count
tribute
that.
that they were paying, and they still pay yearly, to their death in Montejurra includes the...
the Civil War, of course,
yes.
yeah.
includes all
Include the
deaths.
Civil War. Okay.
Yeah.
As like the 4th Carlist War. Okay.
Yeah.
At some point, Franco was going to decide who was going to be the king of Spain.
Okay.
And it's between Juan Carlos
That's
and
right.
Carlos Hugo Borbón Parma.
And at some point, Franco ruled Juan de Borbón out entirely because Juan de Borbón and his acolytes were conspiring with the Allies and with the Americans and with the Socialist Party of Spain to form a political bloc in opposition to Franco. And then after that, Carlos Hugo had his great opportunity. There was a certain moment in which Franco seemed to be leaning toward that guy. But after a while, he in the end decided that he was going to be Juan Carlos.
In the meanwhile, Juan Carlos, who then would be Juan Carlos I, King of
A
Spain,
young man and a teenager.
was Franco's ward. It's a son of a defeated king who then moves to live with the family of the victors, and therefore is kind of captive
A
there.
ward of the state.
Yeah. It's captive there. They train him. They send, in the case of Juan Carlos, they put him through schools. Then they send him to the Navy and I believe the Air Force. I don't know. They put the man through quite a bit of military training. They were always very on top of him. Of his
You are going to
every
fulfill
statement,
this.
every press, anything was tightly controlled by the regime. So it was essentially a captive.
So after Franco chooses Juan Carlos as king,
Yes.
And not,
as a successor, sorry.
yes, and not on this. Also, it needs to be mentioned that Franco choosing Juan Carlos is a deliberate break in the legitimate
line of the
succession
throne,
of
right?
the House of Bourbon.
It should have
Which
been
is-
Juan de Borbón, yes.
In a way,
Yes.
The father.
Yeah, attack. Well,
Yeah,
it's a slight to the institution of the monarchy in a way.
Okay.
And to Juan de Borbón, of course.
Franco chooses Juan Carlos,
Yes.
which makes Carlos Hugo de Bourbon Parma kind of, a free agent now. He's not going to be king. And so he more confidently turns to the left, more liberal. And he continues going to the mass every year in
Montejurra.
In Montejurra, exactly.
I was just going to add to your point of this mountain being important. It's important and significant, especially because some battles in all the Carlist War were fought
Around there.
Yes.
Yeah, and which is why they chose it as a place to commemorate.
It's very much of a symbol, and very meaningful to the whole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going up there, they're commemorating, and we're now coming up to the
1976.
the 70s, 76.
Yes.
And
9th of May.
Carlos Hugo de Bourbon Parma, the guy who didn't get the crown, is going now. He's married with Princess Irene of Holland. They're going to meet at the monastery of Irache, which is just at the feet of
At the base of
the mountain. And however, as we have been highlighting, there have been schisms within the Carlist movement.
Yeah.
And so there are people who are very unhappy that Carlos Hugo has become so leftist.
So there was a sense of hostility between these two Carlist families.
Absolutely. And to the point where these guys, what were they called? The
Comunión Tradicionalista, or Traditionalist Communion.
The Tradición Comunista. They choose Sixto Enrique de Bourbon, Carlos Hugo de Bourbon Parma's brother, as the rightful heir
of the throne.
This is what got me into this story.
Okay.
Ramon sent me this video.
Okay.
And it's like there's colored cameras. It's 1976, and we're seeing these
Technicolor
people going up a mountain, and it's crazy because there's just like they're just filming people, and they're all like with ikurriñas, which are the Basque flag, screaming, Gore Euskadi, Askatuta, free hurrah to a free Basque country. And during it's 76, so this is 1 year. Well,
after his death?
It's months. So Franco died in
November,
20th of November,
and that was in May.
It was the 10th of May.
So the end of 75, and then 76 was the first year.
Yeah, a very confused country. Infighting and uncertainty.
There were strikes across the country.
Everybody was like, "What
ETA is active
going on
during this time?"
And everyone is.
Yeah,
there's literally tens of active.
There is a lot at stake, right? Like
groups.
There's a lot of power.
Not only ETA, yes, FRAP and others. Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot at stake.
Literally tens of armed terrorist groups of all varieties and all political ideas. A lot of foreign mercenaries.
Tons of layers, political instability, and these two maybe pretendants of the crown, one with his princess going up a mountain. Is it exciting?
Were all of them going up the mountain?
Yeah.
Like literally?
Yeah, yes. Literally. They're all going 3 kilometers from Estella, right?
So these guys are all these people are doing this ritual going up the mountain.
Yeah.
Yes.
And all hell's gonna break loose at the top.
2 people are gonna die.
Okay, I'm excited. All right,
mess.
Let's take a break.
Quick break, guys. We'll be back in a second. Hey, we're back.
Yes.
And so let's give it a little recap.
I need a recap.
Right, it's a lot of information. I know, guys. I just wanted to use this first to learn a little bit about Carlism.
Yeah.
And
very interesting.
Internal Spanish politics and the place of the Basque Country and a little bit. I thought that was an interesting topic.
Yeah.
With the excuse of this crime. So we had Franco choose between 2 possible kings.
Mm-hmm.
He, in the end, didn't choose Carlos Hugo, who is the guy we're going to follow in our story. He's going to go up the mountain, and his brother is going to be going up the mountain, being supported by the kind of radical right-wingers of the Carlists.
Okay. All right.
And then on the other hand, Franco chose Juan Carlos, who did become king.
Yep.
He was brought up by Franco in a way, he was
a ward of the state.
He was a ward of the state, exactly. And so he was kind of, educated toward this. And after Juan Carlos was chosen as king, we see that Carlos Hugo, who had already started, in the 60s, already had contact with Franco, and they had gone up Montejurra together. He eventually became more freed to become perhaps more honest or evolve in his politics, and he became much more liberal, much more, asking for freedoms, and and he was still going up this mountain.
He had a different ideology from Franco.
Yeah, and also amongst all those things, we see that this is actually the year, not the exact. Well, it was November 75 that Franco died, and this is May 76. So this is right in the middle of it all, and we didn't quite introduce this very structuredly, but this is why we're covering this. Franco dies on November 20th. There's just all sorts of competing political powers. We're going up the mountain now. It's Montejurra. It's on the 9th of May. What has happened is that Sixto, the right-wing potential Carlist guy, has had a lot of support from the United States. Politically right.
So they were backing him.
Yeah.
They wanted him to be king.
Yeah.
Well, not exactly.
Well, no. They wanted to cause problems in Europe. And Carlos Hugo is going up the mountain, as he's been doing for years.
Yeah.
Carlos Hugo is with his wife at the monastery of Irache, which is at the base of the mountain. And there's commotion. There's people start throwing things at the more left-leaning Carlistas who are with Carlos Hugo. And it turns out that one of this Argentinian guy, Rodolfo Eduardo Almiron, is one of the biggest instigators. It's kind of the guy who's directing the kind of let's throw stones. And eventually José Luis Marín García Verde shoots somebody in the crowd, and they die. Ricardo García Pallejero.
But why were they? What was the conflict?
So
why were they fighting each other?
While Hugo and everybody were gathering, the left-leaning Carlists were gathering. The right-leaning Carlists, they start causing problems, and to the extent where they end up shooting a person in the crowds. This shooting happens. There's a shot heard. You can see the film. The guy is being carried away. I'm not sure you see the actual shot, but you see the guy being carried towards the church and set next to the church, and they're trying to stop his bleeding. Of course, the crowd is clearly asking the police to intervene. Yeah, there's police everywhere. What do they say? Estamos bajo órdenes. We're under order. We're under order
to not.
And they're just
intervene.
But in the end, they call an ambulance, and everybody decides to go up the mountain anyway. So they all start to go up the mountain anyway, right? Carlos Hugo, his wife, and some priests and everybody, ton of people. And when we see these images, it's ridiculous. It's like what is a medium-sized mountain, right? But it's a mountain. It's kind of and it's got quite a steep slope. But these people
have to work.
They're
to get to the top.
Probably 20, 30 people across, kind of just going up the mountain. The whole thing is just people walking up the mountain, you know? It's a ton, it's a mess.
Okay.
And so what happens is that on the 9th, the night before, Sixto and his quadrilla, his group of friends, his bunch of no-goods, they went up with tons of batons.
So they got sent up post.
They were there on the 9th. On the previous day, Sixto had gone up with his friends. So this is the 10th
right
in the morning.
And these guys go up like
the
with their
lefties,
batons.
the left wing Carlists are going up there. And when you start getting up at the top, they start being beaten with batons. And eventually, there start to be lots of shooting. Some shots, a number of shots, and eventually somebody shoots with a machine gun. And one guy dies.
But there's probably injuries.
There were dozens of injuries. And the guy who died at the top of the mountain was Antonio Jimenez Santos. And, he was already dead when they were bringing him down. And you can even see that in the images of the video. You can see him being brought down in
stretcher.
Stretcher, thank you. So, our feelings go out to these two guys' families, and it's still even controversial. One of them at some point, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which one, but somebody wanted to put a hat, a boina on the coffin, which was apparently a symbol of the Carlists, and his mother was like, no, he wasn't a Carlist. So, just to highlight that there were all these political movements happening. Maybe he was just more...
his death was even controversial.
What was he? Was he more left-wing? Was he more a Basque nationalist? Was he more Christian, Catholic? Yeah, so, these are the two deaths at Montejurra. On that same day, immediately after the shooting at the top of the mountain, Sixto was escorted away by the police, the one that had support of the United States. Apparently, he was escorted to France very
keep him safe
efficiently, yes, without declaring to the police anything. He was just taken.
Come on, I mean,
I just to clarify something that is maybe of some importance. We are of course not saying that the United States was interested in making Sixto the king of Spain.
No,
that was of course not the case. If anything, which is, I agree, not entirely proven, the US would be interested in creating political instability in certain countries, including Spain. What is for sure, however, is that the government of Spain supported Sixto's acolytes to go to Montejurra and to the teeth.
So
sounds like a mess.
It
just sounds like a mess.
It is a mess, and it's transition. Although the police initially did nothing, they eventually do take people into custody. They take this Argentinian guy, Rodolfo Eduardo Almiron, Stefano Dolecchiaie, an Italian anti-communist from an organization, OTAN. I had never heard of it, and I thought it was very ironic because it's
OTAN.
Yeah, because it's the same as
NATO
in Castilian. It sounds hilarious that NATO is a terrorist organization. And then there's José Luis Marín García Verde, then José Arturo Márquez de Prado, and Francisco Carreras García Mauriño. All these guys were taken into custody, and eventually only the last three, José Luis, José Arturo, and Francisco Carreras, were deemed to be, more responsible for those two deaths. And there was a law of amnesty, which just excused everybody.
So amazing.
I mean, for sure, one of the main requests from the transition was that they excuse all the political prisoners,
of course,
all the people
all the
who
crimes.
are union leaders, and there were many of them around this time.
Yeah.
And so, it was, and so they did excuse a lot of those people. and a lot of the political prisoners, including everybody involved in this story. So, that's the end of the story. So we,
Okay.
we got to the top of the mountain. Carlos Sixto had been hiding with the far right of the Carlists on the top of the mountain to cause problems, to cause chaos and mayhem.
Yeah.
And Carlos Hugo went up at the bottom in the monastery. One person was shot. He was taken to hospital. When they got to the top, there was a lot of mayhem. Somebody, in the end of the day, who was this guy?
If you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
the operation was designed so they caused chaos at both ends.
Yeah.
So people had nowhere to go. If you see the footage, you see
There was a lot
people
of mayhem.
completely confused, just standing around, others running upwards, others
Yeah.
running downwards,
Yeah.
people carrying others. It's
Not sure
absolute
what's
chaos.
going on. Yeah.
And in the end,
It could have been much worse, is what I always think.
Jose Luis Marin Garcia Verde, who was an ex-military guy, or it says military, so I'm not sure if he was ex or current, but he was implicated in the shooting of both of them, actually. Even though there was all these foreign mercenaries, the Italians, the Argentinians, in the end, that was it. And they were, because of that law, they were all excused. So that was the end of this. I just want to recognize that in 2018, Podemos and Compromís wanted to cancel the amnesty.
Those are two political parties.
Yeah. And they wanted to cancel the amnesty, and PSOE, PP, and Ciudadanos were against it.
Other political parties.
Yeah. And also the Carlists, I forget which year exactly, but they accused the king, Juan Carlos, the first king, the one that's currently considered the ex-king. They accused him personally of orchestrating this, and they came out, and so it's a mess, right? But
did they?
We learned they accused,
and what has
and
come
nothing.
of that?
Well, just
nothing.
They just accused him.
Sure.
So it's mostly an episode about learning about the Carlists, because every article you read about anywhere, the Spanish history or Basque history, the Carlists are so important. So we learned a lot about them today, I think, even if it was a little bit confusing.
It was confusing for me.
I hope you guys got
too much history.
But politics is confusing. It's not simple.
It is.
There's lots of layers. It wasn't. I didn't really know where to start. So, as long as we.
And you guys did great, huh?
I think.
Thank you so much for all your insight.
Yeah, thanks for
coming. It was amazing.
It was super fun to have you guys' insights, and I think essential. But yeah.
Should we do mini crime time?
Yes.
Okay. I believe our guest Iñigo has a mini crime time he wants to share with us.
Go for it.
All right, Iñigo.
Yes, I don't know to what extent this even qualifies as crime, because
that's
why it's a mini crime.
It doesn't matter.
It is really very puny. If our listeners are expecting something spectacular, they are going to be very disappointed. But
no problem.
I gotta say that back in 2018, I think it was around Christmas time. Well, as by means of introduction, I gotta say that I live in Bilbao, in the very interesting area of San Francisco. If you are in Bilbao, that's the right place to be, because it is very multiculti and very exciting and very vibrating in many, many ways. And then we have people from various parts of the globe, and we have a very sizable Moroccan community. Okay, that's the introduction. Now, I'm not blaming anybody here, because the only person to be blamed of what this crime that I'm going to describe is me myself. So I was returning home from a night out, and then this effect that alcohol has many times of
relativism,
lowering down your level of alertness and everything. So I was approaching home And then there was this guy, and then he approaches me and he started speaking in French, which of course I could not be able to understand. And then I said, no, it's going to be Spanish or English, one of the two, you decide. and then in Spanish, he said to me that he was in a very, very bad situation, very problematic situation, in which he basically, take-home message was that he needed to call home in Morocco to speak to his mom. And then, of course, I mean, it was Christmas time. I am not going to pretend that I am the best person in the globe, but if someone is in dire straits, of course, I'm very happy to help and do unto others, etc. And then I said, oh, of course. I did not even think that it was very unlikely that this man was going to call his mom in Morocco at fucking 5 o'clock in the morning. But he started dialing. But then all of a sudden, he started running very fast.
Yeah.
And the best thing was that he was running in the direction of my apartment. So I said, okay, I'm going that
run way
too, because worst case scenario, I will be home. And of course, there was no way for me to catch him. Wow. Now, the reason I say that maybe this does not qualify as crime is because he technically...
Because you did technically hand him your phone.
And maybe, someday this guy will return me my phone after having...
No, I don't think so.
No?
I give you some props for being such a nice guy, like going, oh, pobre.
Very
like
sweet.
He wants to talk to his mom
I was
at
slightly
Christmas.
tipsy, and that may have been a factor accounting for my niceness, but yeah.
Well, thank you. That was a great mini.
That was great.
Well, guys, that was a great episode. I hope everybody had a good time. See you guys next time. We'll be here.
We bid you agur. Agur. Crimes of the Basque Lands is written and produced by
Douglas D. Carvalho,
Julie Garcia,
I'm Megan Dooley.
the sound and editing for each episode by
Douglas D. Carvalho,
I'm Megan Dooley.
theme song written by
Douglas D. Carvalho,
Julie Garcia,
I'm Megan Dooley.
sung by the choir with no name and produced by Tom Squires. Podcast art by Distinct Signal. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Crimes of the Basque Lands and contact us at crimesofthebasquelands@gmail.com with story ideas worldwide which have a connection to the Basque Country or any rave reviews. If you like our podcast, please subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, agur!